Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's live stream. Today, we're here to talk about when teams turn toxic, how to break that cycle. If you're just joining me for the first time, my name is Crystal Brown, and I am one of the co founders of Korero Solutions. We are here specially designed all of our. Oh, where's my mouth going today? Our team at Korero Solutions is here in order to help you deal with all things team dynamics. So we know you have the technical side. We're here to help with that people side. All right, so jumping into it today, teams turning toxic. This is something that I have been a part of. This is something that I have felt myself, being somebody who's gone through that cycle of burnout and changing jobs and all kinds of other stuff. But I will get into that in a minute right now because there's one thing that I need to make sure to clear up. And that's that people come into organizations toxic. And though I will say there is a few people that are just plain bad hires and do have some bad habits and bad attitudes, that's not what happens the majority of the time. Harvard research shows that 70% of workplace toxicity comes from good people who turn toxic. 70% of toxicity from talk that creates toxic workplaces is from good people who turn toxic, not people that were born that way. And this is so important because too often when myself and my business partner and our colleagues get called in to work with some of these organizations that have gone toxic, it's let's just get rid of the problem person and everything is going to make things better. But what if that's not true? What if the toxicity isn't about that person? And by firing them, you're just costing yourself and the organization time and money and resources. I don't want that for you. I know you don't want that for your organization. So today we're going to dive in and figure out what can you do first to prevent that from happening and then to get ahead of these issues happening in the first place because without even knowing it, you may already be going down that path and none of us want that. I don't want that for you. So today we're going to cover some of those early warning signs, give you a few different tools so that you can intervene when you start seeing that dysfunction beginning to brew, and then we'll highlight some of the blind spots that let toxic culture creep into your organization unnoticed. First though, I want to start with what toxicity is not. What behaviors are not toxic, but sometimes that's the way that they're looked at. Giving challenging feedback. Right? Lots of times they say, "Oh, that's too harsh, that's aggressive," and that's what makes it toxic. Giving challenging feedback is not a toxic behavior. As long as it is clear and it is kind. It is done to improve the other person, not to bring them down. I love that quote by Brené Brown. Clear is kind and kind is clear. So you can give challenging feedback because without it, it's actually a disservice to people, but you need to make sure it is clear and it is kind. Next, enforcing boundaries, that is not toxic. Saying, I don't work after this time, or if you have to be on call, what are the parameters? What else can you do? When can it occur? Enforcing and setting boundaries for yourself or your team standing up for themselves to say, I'm not working in these conditions, they're dangerous. That isn't toxic. It is an opportunity to have a conversation to find out what's going on and why they feel like they need to set that boundary. The last one I'm going to give you about what's not toxic, and because I could talk forever about this or misconceptions, is having differing opinions and values. And I think this one's hitting home a lot, especially today. I'm recording this on September 11th. Um, I don't know when you're watching this right now, if you're watching it live or later on down the road, but September 11th is a huge day for so many, and I'm just checking to see if there's any comments or anything coming in right now. For a lot of people, because it highlights these different opinions, these different values, and there's nothing wrong with having different ideas and different values. Where it turns toxic is what we do after, how the conversations are had, the views that we place on people that have them. That's where these turn. But without having these different opinions, these different values, our work cultures would be at such a disadvantage. So making sure that in order to avoid dipping into these toxic behaviors and these early warning signs, creating a space where people can communicate differing ideas, different perspectives, sometimes dissenting ones that don't go along with the crowd, and creating the space to have those conversations, that's what's going to take these from turning toxic. So there's almost like a pre-advice for you before we launch into the rest of this. Just keeping in mind if somebody's contrary, if somebody's being negative, that doesn't necessarily mean they're toxic, right? It's what they do after and how those opinions and those values are taken. Okay, enough with my rant about that. Let's get into some of these early warning signs. All right, the first is that the collaboration is going to fade. And let me give you a little story about this. And this is going to be part of a personal story because it happened to a friend of mine. She was working in an organization when she was in her early 20s, and she had she had a few different coworkers that were not pulling their weight, and she was frustrated. She had gotten along so well with her boss, with her manager, and she was the only other full-time employee, so they collaborated so much. But then the part-time employees came in, and they were taking extended lunches, they weren't showing up to meetings with her, and she started getting so frustrated. Her mentality shifted from, "Okay, I'm here, I'm gonna do the best job that I possibly can," to, "Why do I even bother?" She was not interested in collaborating with her coworkers anymore because for her, it looked like they didn't care about the job. They didn't care about her. So that was the first thing that went was that collaboration. She decided, "That's it. I'm just gonna sit here and I'm just gonna put in my time and I'm just gonna do my tasks." And things progressed after that and continued escalating because without that collaboration, they then didn't have the casual conversations that they needed to. And the relationships that were built during those collaborative moments stopped happening, which is so detrimental for teams. So, this is if you can pick up that the collaboration is stopping between your teams, it's the number one thing to jump on top of right away. Right. Next is that the participation drops. That person that's always raising their hand, all of a sudden, they're not putting it up anymore. And it's not because of burnout. And it's not because you've told them to stop putting up their hand. When you see people that are always jumping into the organization committees and suddenly they're stepping back, there's something going on. Because if somebody's feeling truly invested in a company, they don't step back, they step forward. So you need to pick up on that right away. The participation is dropping. Not just the raising hands, but are they no longer showing up to team events? Right? We'll get into what you can do after this. Then blame starts shifting. I worked in a workplace that I think blame was basically just the lingo that happened there. that if it wasn't one person's fault, it was the other person's fault, right? Nobody was responsible for their work. Nobody took accountability for something not getting done, for things getting missed. When the blame starts being shifted, when the buck starts being passed to somebody else, something is going on. Your team is then throwing each other under the bus as opposed to saying, yeah, I was waiting for a report for so and so, and because of that, I wasn't able to get mine. If it is, it's it's Maureen's fault. Maureen never gets me her reports in time. These are clear, bing, red flags that you need to go, okay, I need to check in. The last is that they're getting territorial over the resources. Now this one can get very petty. Have you ever worked in some place, and let me know if you're catching this on the replay. Have you ever worked someplace where people mark their staplers? Like, physically put their name on their stapler because they're afraid that someone's gonna take it, right? Another department or another person, right? How about the funding, the budget, right? This is my budget, this is your budget. That really sucks if you can't make budget and I have a surplus, right? The chairs, the monitors, going after the equality, right? If she gets this or he gets this, why don't I? He got to go to a conference last month. Why don't I get to go to a conference this month? Right? He gets to have an assistant. Why don't I get an assistant? Right? These are those early warning signs. They point to a bigger issue happening. And I want to be very, very clear here. The issue might be the person, but it might be how the organization is set up. Right? And we're going to look at that again in a little bit, but I want you to just start thinking right now in your mind, are my people territorial over resources or their work? Right? Judy always does that report. I asked her to hand it off and she won't. What's going on? What's happening? So that jumps into what are you going to do, right? How can you address this? How can you get in front of this? So what tools can you use in order to start intervening? Checking in, right? That is your number one thing. You need to be able to sit down and check in and see what's going on. If they're afraid of letting go of a task that they've had before, what's going on? Right? What's happening here? Collaboration fades, huge red flag. Go and have a conversation and get curious. You need to gain clarity. You need to go to the person and ask and see what has changed. Right? Then it's time for accountability and empathy. Right? If they're shifting blame, you can bring it up. You can have a discussion, but be empathetic. And I don't want you to just take the accountability without the empathy. Here, emotions are going to play a key role because when somebody's backing up, when somebody is starting to turn toxic, it's not because they're happy. It's not because they're engaged. It's not because they love every day working for the organization. Because there's bad feelings going on. Could be anger, sadness, resentment. They could be feeling a lack of belonging. You can hold accountability, but you need to bring that empathy piece. And listen, this is going to be a hard part for so many people. I get it because we don't want to feel like we're responsible for the hurt that somebody else is going through. And we don't want to often sit in that uncomfortable feeling. But to start making a breakthrough, you're going to need to, right? So it's okay. And we teach this to leaders during our coaching programs. Is probably the number one thing that we teach is you don't have to agree with their emotion. but you do have to recognize that that is true for them. So being able to sit there and not say, "Well, you have no reason to be frustrated by this. Your life isn't that bad, or the task isn't that bad. Why are you so resentful? Like, I don't get it. You went through this change process with the rest of us. Why are you the only one that can't get on board?" Right? That's where the mind naturally wants to go, is what's wrong with this person? Instead, I'd urge you to sit in that discomfort with them and help them unpack it, because all that they know is that they feel terrible about whatever situation they're in right now, and they're holding on to a lot of it, right? They haven't expressed it. So give them that space to let it out. Now, this one may seem a little counterintuitive with how to address toxicity. Recognition. Okay, now before you're like, why should I recognize toxic behavior? You're not going to recognize the toxic behavior here. So here's a little bit of psychology. If you know me, if you listen to my stuff and consume my content, you know that I love the brain. You know that I love talking about the brain, researching the brain, all things brain. And something that I pull back, we're not going to go back in time, but to my college days, um, is behavior modification. And I'm not talking Pavlov's dog style here, but how to get more of the behavior that you want out of people. And the least effective way is by constantly pointing to the bad. Now, we're not talking toxic positivity here, where you're always only going to highlight the good, right? We discussed before, clear is kind, kind is clear. You're allowed to give hard feedback. But if you are able to focus on the good, on those little moments of positivity about what they're contributing, about things that make you happy, if you can latch onto even just a second, a moment of positive behavior that you want to continue seeing from them, that's going to stick. So if you're in a meeting and somebody is willing to step up and say, "You know what? I'll I'll take that on. I'll help that person on. The newbie, send him over to my desk. I can show him how to input his social insurance number," or whatever, what have you. Jump on that. Wow. Joe, thank you so much for offering to do that. It is such a weight off of my plate and my mind, and you've been here for so long. I think our new hire being able to sit down, even to just do that, is going to make their transition to this company so much better, so much easier. So thank you. Thank you for stepping up and taking that on. It means a lot. All of a sudden, they're thinking, okay, I interesting. Not 100% sure what's going on, but I'll take it. And it builds and it builds. So these little things, these rewards of good behavior, they're going to wind up equaling something really big and powerful as you go along, as you see this is rewarded and this was good, this was rewarded. Um, yeah, really, really important with psychology that we are noticing the good to help pull them out of the bad, right? That's why gratitude works. That's why the gratitude work and the psychology, because we're refocusing our mind. So if we can refocus our interactions around the good and not always the bad, right? You get more of those, oh, they're noticing. Okay, maybe I do have value here, right? Checking in, making sure that you are on it, and it's going to take some effort. I get it, because your brain is focusing on all the bad stuff they're doing too. If you've now labeled them as a toxic person, it's gonna be harder for your brain to see the reverse that. If you are constantly training your brain that this person is toxic and always looking for the negative, it's gonna be more challenging to see the positive. So this is about retraining your brain to go and look for the positive. So I don't know if you have to set it in your calendar or what you need to do, but look for those moments on a daily basis. And suddenly that's what your brain is going to start seeing as those positive things. So you want to keep reinforcing that. Okay, I think I've harped on that one for long enough. If you have any questions, drop them in the chat or send me a DM afterwards, and I'm happy to talk about that. Um, but our last part here is how to figure out where your blind spots are so that toxic culture doesn't creep in unnoticed. Because I'll tell you right now, toxic culture doesn't happen overnight. And from personal experience, sometimes you don't even know you're in it until you're out of it. I had a moment when I left my toxic workplace and I could physically feel I was sitting downstairs watching TV with my family after I had given notice at my job. And I think it was after I actually left my job. And it was I was sitting downstairs with my family, and all of a sudden it was like this euphoric lift come off of me. And I had not noticed the impact that it was having on me, the weight that I was carrying around for years, because that's how toxic workplaces start, is they start small with little behaviors that are then tolerated, and that bar gets moved, the threshold gets moved. And I know this isn't just my story because I've talked to a lot of people who have been put on mental health leave because of the environment they're in, and they've experienced the same thing. I didn't know how bad it was until I was out. And it's because we all have these blind spots. So, how or where may some of your blind spots be? And I'll tell you right now, blind spots, like I was saying, are really hard. And that's why we're so passionate about the work that we do, is because it's important that we highlight the blind spots people have. And that's why we developed, my business partner and I, this 14-day program. So, in addition to trying to highlight blind spots, the real focus is on getting you and your team the skills that you need to start addressing behaviors and issues before they grow and you wind up needing specialized help. So I'm going to drop a link in the chat right now, that you could go and pick up that 14-day program. I'm going to tell you right now, it is absolutely free. You do not have to pay a cent for it. For 14 days, we show up in your inbox in all different ways, shapes, and forms in order to give you tools, resources, and skills to get ahead of all of these issues, right? Talking about how to have more collaborative meetings, appreciation, understanding how people deal with conflict. You want to talk about toxic behavior? How you deal with conflict? That's absolutely huge. So I've dropped that in the chat. Go and check that out. Again, absolutely free for 14 days, loaded with tools and strategies and skills and ideas. And you're welcome to share it. Share the link with any people on your team that you would like. Love to hear how you're finding it, the people that are already signed up. Okay, so those blind spots. We're going to start with workload, right? How much are you working? Are you taking on work for others that you shouldn't be? Are there accountability issues? Is it because people are saying, no, I'm not doing that? Or sometimes you could even be afraid, if I'm going to give this to them, what's it going to be like? Because their work has been suffering over the past few years, right? This is a huge blind spot. We just think, well, it's just because we're so busy. And coming out of summer, everyone that I talked to said, this is the busiest summer that I can remember. If they weren't on vacation for a month, it was insane. So check into your workload, right? Is more on your plate than you feel like has ever been before? Right? Then what is getting rewarded? I was having a conversation with somebody, and actually, I was having a conversation with a few people, and sorry, engineers, but you keep coming up. um, the mentality around, is this a competitive environment or is it a collaborative environment, right? What is getting rewarded? Everyone right now, I mean, if you're on LinkedIn, which if you're watching my live, you're on LinkedIn, or catching me over on YouTube, but it is this idea of collaboration, right? It's being pushed. Everyone has to go and take collaborative training, and we're having collaborative meetings, and we're having collaborative relationships. But when push comes to shove, what is getting rewarded? Is it being competitive, right? Look at all of these little things. Think, how did I get my job? How did I get my role? First, it was probably a competitive process, right? You were weeded out amongst everybody else to finally wind up there, right? So keep looking through. Okay, well, how do leads get chose for projects, right? How does money get allocated? How do raises happen? Is it collaborative or is it competitive? What kind of behaviors get noticed? Is it when people work together or is it when they push through and achieve something and then they get to take the credit? Right? In your team meetings, is it individual contribution that gets shouted out or is it teams? Right? Start looking at these little things, and there's nuance to this, of course, and we're always happy to teach and train on this, but just start looking right now at what is getting rewarded, competitive or collaborative efforts. Competitive or collaborative behaviors. All right. For the last thing here, as we get going, um, your blind spot might be what your priorities are, right? How do priorities get figured out, right? We're stuck in a time of so much change right now that priorities keep shifting. Sometimes priorities are tasks, sometimes priorities are people. And it's resulting in an awful lot of burnout. About 3 of the organizations that I've talked to this past week have said that their organizations have been undergoing change constantly for the past 5 years. 5 years of constant change, which means 5 years of people trying to keep up, get on board, shift the way that they're doing things. And not only are they burnt out, but they're ticked off and they're exhausted, right? So, where are our priorities? Is it on making those changes or is it on making sure that our people are mentally well enough to take on that next change, right? Looking at that, checking in, not just everyone okay? Yep, sure. Perfect. Let's do the next rollout. Next, do the next system update. Let's move buildings. Let's hire 5 more people. Let's lay off 3 more people, right? Slowing down, getting very clear. Where do your priorities lie? Are your people getting burnt out by the changes in priorities? Perfect. Okay. Well, that was a lot. I get. Today, we went for almost 30 minutes. Oh my goodness. Fantastic work. If you stuck around, I would love to hear from you in the DMs. Any topics that you would find interesting that we make sure to cover. Again, I am here every single Thursday, barring any technical issues. So please make sure, drop me a DM if there's a topic that you are interested in. If you want to work with us, go and check down at the link below, and you can come have a 30-minute conversation with myself or Jeanette. And we would be happy to see, is there stuff that we can help you with? Right? I know that these organizations don't just exist in isolation. So knowing now that 70% of the organizations that turn toxic aren't about that bad hire, how we can come and help you through coaching, through training, whatever is going to work for you. Let's get on a call, give you some relief, right? Give you that exhale to know that you're not in this alone. You have support. You just need the right tools. You just need the right strategy to implement to make an amazing change in your life and the lives of your team and everyone that you work with. All right. Again, my name is Crystal Brown. Thank you so much for joining me today. And I look forward to seeing you next week.